Call the meeting to order. Those who would care to, please stand for an opening prayer and salute to the flag. Dr. Ward, if you would, please.
Father, we bow in your presence, and we have come to that time of the year that we recognize your birth, and we realize that we needed a Savior, and we are thankful that you came into our time and space, and because of that, you have redeemed us from our bondage to sin. I also thank you for this city. I thank you for the men and women who serve it on our staff and for the men and women of this council. And we pray for wisdom and guidance and courage. And in all things, we just ask for your blessings. In the name of your Son, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would like to make an announcement that for the listening audience and the people at home, I might have the opportunity as Mayor Pro Tem to be able to vote twice. I'll vote once as a council member, and if it comes to a tiebreaker as a Mayor Pro Tem, I have the final vote on that also. So, Mayor's announcements and appointments and votes. We have representatives from MoDOT here talking about the preliminary plan and right-of-way plan. David, would you like to introduce them?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, tonight we have Tom Dancy. Tom is our design engineer with CJW Transportation. We got a short presentation this evening, and also Don. I'm drawing a blank. Seiko. There we go. Don Seiko. I'm sorry. Don is an engineer with the Missouri Department of Transportation. He is the overall project manager, and they're going to present a brief summary of our design for the intersection of Oakwood and Highway 60, Highway 60 in Oakwood, in deference to MoDOT. And you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Good evening. As David mentioned, I'm Tom Dancy with CJW Transportation Consultants in Springfield, and we're excited to be on this project. We've been working very diligently, particularly here over the past few weeks to get to final design to try to accelerate the schedule of the project that you all are familiar with. The intersection there at Oakwood and 60 is, as you know, and that MoDOT has monitored for a while as being one of the higher crash frequency locations in the district, and looking at what the remedial measures could be for that. What was identified was a traffic signal improvement, and that's been on the plan for a while. When we took to looking at the preliminary layout of the improvements at the intersection, what that would look like, how it could interact with the railroad proximity so close to the intersection, the need for railroad preemption with and interaction with that traffic signal would be necessary because of how close it is, and make sure that we're not blocking people on the tracks as traffic might back up with the traffic signal. In looking at what it would cost BNSF Railway, the railroad, to provide that signal, the detection that would be needed on their rail line to communicate with the traffic signal, the estimates that were coming in were making it cost prohibitive, really, to go with just a standard four-leg intersection with a traffic signal. And so we needed to go back and take a look at some other alternatives, and we did that. We actually had public open house, as you're aware, back in August, and looked at several and discussed several alternatives with the public. Received 37 comments at that meeting, and generally spoke in favor of the traffic signal. Obviously, there was a concern among several of changing the access to Farm Road 93. In taking those concerns into consideration, we went back and actually developed another alternative that we've landed on at present. And what this design does, it does preserve the full access at the for all movements can at least go in all directions, just not at the intersection itself. If you look at the intersection itself, on the north side, it will be converted to a right-in, right-out, and it would be unsignalized right-in, right-out. That basically it would be a yielding movement, just as a free right turn as you see at other locations. That's important because that would not necessitate preemption and interconnection with the railroad. The other movements that would have to be prohibited by that would be the eastbound left turn in, going east, turning north onto Farm Road 93. That would be prohibited at the intersection, as well as the straight through. If you're going from south to north, it would be that would be omitted as well. And of course, looking at the reasoning behind restricting that access is because of how that functions with the proximity of the railroad there as well. So, in lieu of providing that access at the intersection, one of the design concepts that MoDOT has deployed at other locations, and Don will speak to those other locations and their experience with that, is the concept of the J-turns, or providing U-turns on either side of the intersection itself. So in order to accommodate the movements that are not permitted at the intersection, we are proposing the U-turns to the east and to the west. To the east, about 900 feet. You can see we've got the turnaround, and then with each one of these turnarounds, we've got the flared section to allow for and to accommodate for heavier vehicles, larger vehicles, to make that U-turn movement. And then to the west, we've also got one about 800 feet to the west to provide for the southbound turning right. If they want to go back to the east, they would come down, they would make the right turn at the intersection, go down, make their U-turn, and then head back to the east. Likewise, if they wanted to go straight through from Farm Road 93 south to Oakwood, then they would also utilize this U-turn. They would go make their right turn, make the U-turn, come back and make a right turn. With the design, we do have right turn lanes that are being installed in the northbound and both the east and westbound directions. We've got the left turn lane, which is the predominant movement in the evenings. Certainly in the PM peak, we see over 300 vehicles making that left turn. We've provided an extension for more additional left turn storage there for that westbound left turn. And then with these improvements, MoDOT is also looking at lowering the speed limit through this and extending the 40-mile-per-hour speed zone that is currently there at the Hamilton intersection, extending that to the east beyond the scope of this project to slow the traffic down. The right-of-way for the project, it did require some right-of-way. We actually did get a donation from the Binding Group, from Republic Ford. They were grateful to have the project there at their front door, and worked well with MoDOT in allowing that transfer of the right-of-way, which was necessary for the project. So thanks to the Binding Group. With that, as far as schedule goes, we are looking at a MoDOT letting in February. We go out for bid to contractors, and then looking at a notice to proceed that's anticipated for April. And as far as construction time, we see this as a 4-month project, and one of the ways that MoDOT has been able to get some competitive pricing, competitive bids for the projects, is to allow some more of a flexible schedule for the contractor. And in doing so, we set basically a notice to proceed and anticipated start date, and then you set an ultimatum, maximum end date. And for this project, we were looking at December 1st. The improvements would be completed no later than December 1st. And of course, giving the contractor 4 months. So once he gets on site and begins construction, the clock starts ticking, then he has 4 months to complete the project. So, with that, I'll go ahead and let Don speak a little bit to MoDOT's success with the J-turns and at other locations, and then we'll field any questions you might have after his.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've all received the handout, I think, on this. We've got 2 J-turns in the state that we can look at before and after. We've got some up on 65, but those I can't look at the accident data before and after since it was a 2-lane highway to begin with, and we converted to a 4-lane with the J-turn. So you'd be comparing a 2-lane to a 4-lane without J-turn versus J-turn. So it's not really a fair comparison. But what we did do is look at the intersection at Osceola, Cheese, and the before period, we had like 4 crashes, and that was 3 years before we installed it, and it was installed in 2008. So we looked at 3 years before, and then the 3 years after in 2011. And our crashes were cut in half, and you can kind of see on, this is on page 6 of that handout. And you'll see that, total crashes, were decreased by 50%. On page 7, this one's south of St. Louis. It's just south of St. Louis, and they had a serious, crash problem there. They've had several fatalities, and just in the last 4-year period, they had 2 fatalities at that intersection. And then when they end up putting a J-turn in, there's been no fatalities after in the 4-year period after. And what you'll see on that J-turn, the only place most of the accidents are just rear end as you're pulling out. Similar to what you'd have even at, there's a high accident rate even at Oakwood making the rights, because people think they take off and they don't, and then the people behind them end up hitting them. And that's the only, there's a minor accidents, but that's the only type of accident that's occurred at the LeMay Ferry Road. And there hasn't been any serious ones in there because you're not crossing the road. They had a lot of, crossing, trying to make the lefts and go out. And there's no sight distance issues at LeMay Ferry. You can see forever. It's very flat, but this kind of shows our success with this. And then I threw in here some other intersections. I gave a presentation a couple months ago, and like on page 3 shows an intersection at Missouri 13 and Route O. This is north of Springfield, and this looks at a signalized intersection that we put in. What you'll see is the 5-year before, we had 31 crashes. 5 years out, we've had 30 crashes. The only thing that's changed is the type of crashes. You end up getting a lot more rear ends. You don't really decrease your crashes, you just change them. And so that just kind of shows that. And then we looked at another intersection on US 60 east of Rogersville. And you'll see the same thing basically happened. You look at the 5-year before, you have 21 crashes, and you have 19 in the 5 years after. And then, total crashes decreased, 9.5%, and the injured crashes were only, 16.5%, but you didn't decrease the severity on those. So this is going to be a combination of both, a signal and a J-turn, so this will be kind of unique. We haven't done this before, but we're going to, try it here and see how it works. It should be successful. Any questions on it?
So none of the 2 other places that you put in J-turns, there was no other signal work done, it was just J-turns?
They put in the J-turn.
That was the only work that was done, there's no additional signalization, okay.
Right. We put them in more places than that. We've got 4 up on the US 65, but you can't really compare those to before and after.
The speed limits that were studied, is that actually, is that looking at happening in conjunction with this, or is it just going to be a study after the fact?
We'll look at it and look at the accident to see how they compare it to the before and after.
No, I'm talking about the speed reduction.
The speed reduction, our traffic department's been talking about that. I'm not in the traffic department, but they've actually talked about decreasing it as you approach the signal. Right now, as you approach from the east and are heading west, as you approach that signal now, it decreases down to 40. So they're going to back that up and do the same thing for this after the signal goes in there. So we're probably going to decrease it ahead of time before we turn the signal on.
So that makes me feel more comfortable with it.
Any other
questions, council? Yes, Jeff?
Heading northbound and taking a right and heading east on 60, is that right-hand turn also signalized to get on, or is just the left turn, and it doesn't appear to be any merge lane at all, you know, coming across the front of the four-wheeler?
There's not there's a left turn there, but the right turn will be a yield.
Like now, and so everybody, the same thing, look over the left shoulder and start to go and run into the back people, because is there no possibility of a merge-on lane there that would extend, you know, 100 foot or whatever down the front of the car dealer?
I don't know if the right-of-way was possible there or not on that. I don't know if they've looked at
It
that.
doesn't look like we've helped that part of the situation at all.
Yeah, it's more of a,
Yes.
drainage
That'll
concern.
be- It'll be signalized. This will be signalized.
Is that what that is, a huge ditch there?
And then these are
It's a pretty big ditch right there in front of the dealership.
Yeah.
There's where a lot of
It's
it
actually
actually occurs, though, is people pull them out to the right.
There's a lot of crossover accidents. If you look at the accident history there, there's
I saw a few
I
of those
think-
too.
Well, I think a lot of that yielding issue that you're concerned about should hopefully be helped out with the signalization now.
Yeah, but if no one's sitting there turning left, the signal they'll never help them.
Depends, is it on timer or is it, how's it gonna work?
It'll all be eventually,
That
it'll
right
all
lane's
be,
not signaled.
they're all gonna get coordinated eventually, all through Republic here.
I'm talking about your through traffic it'll be signalized so that at some point it'll have to stop and the people making a right turn won't get anxious and just take a chance.
Right. We've got signals all through there. You're gonna have breaks in the traffic. You got signals all the way through 60. You're gonna have traffic stopping to the east, and you will have traffic stopping here for the lefts. So you will get breaks.
Before they do that synchronization of down 60, is this going to be by sensors in the ground, or is it gonna have the cameras that are going to be able to trigger the change of the light?
That is up to the contractor. What we do is we don't specify what they use. They can use, you know, optional signal detection. So if this opens up the market to whatever competitive bid.
But they both work in the same fashion, in
Correct.
that
Correct.
they recognize a vehicle when it comes up to the white stop line.
Yeah, the signal controller doesn't know the difference. It knows whether a vehicle's been detected or not. Not necessarily how it was detected.
Will they be sensitive enough to recognize motorcycles? I hear a lot of complaints about that. Motorcycles aren't heavy enough to trigger it.
It's magnetic, it's not weight.
Yeah, but I know several people that ride motorcycles and they say they don't work too good.
Depends if they stop on the
In the middle or on the edge.
Yeah, they're magnetic. Most of them have gotten a lot better.
Being new, it should be better then.
I hope so.
Yeah, and the sensitivity can be adjusted as well.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation by HDR on the impact fee.
We can have just a moment, please, Mayor Pro Tem, to get things done up. Thank you, Don. I apologize for that rain fail.
Didn't sound very well.
No, I won't be, I was just wondering if there's a possibility of, well, doing that, would make that a little better too, but with the ditch there, it'd be kinda hard, and the roads in the center, there's no extreme in the center either, they usually have for left.
For this presentation, we have Michael Pacina. Mike is a project manager with HDR Engineering out of Springfield, and he's going to present a summary PowerPoint presentation of a study and analysis that they did for water and sewer connection charges or impact fees, as we know them.
While Mike is getting ready, I just want to add that for anybody that seems to be a little late or tardy in getting this done, but we put this portion of that original water and sewer rate study, we put this portion on hold so that obviously we can get the water and rate study for the utility billing done in a timely fashion. This obviously is another important component to the overall water and sewer systems, and these are the impact fee study results that Mike and his group put together.
Okay, thank you very much. As Jim mentioned, this is the second part of our contract to talk about your connection charges and presenting the findings and some initial findings from what we did and from the data the city provided. The purpose of what we're talking about tonight is to review the results of our water and sewer service connection charge, or you'll see SSC throughout the presentation. That's System Connection Charge. We're going to define what they are, what criteria we use to put the charges together, a brief discussion of legal considerations, review our methodology, and then talk about the numbers we came up with, which is what everyone wants to hear about. Why are we doing this? It's a one-time, what is it first? It's a one-time charge to new development, to pay for development. The thought is growth pays for growth. As you build a new house or a new business, it's going to impact and use capacity of your existing water and sewer systems. And so what you're trying to do is provide a balance between your existing and new customers, and you generate revenue for growth and not have it all in your rates. What do we look at? We look at legal requirements, what state law says about connection charges in Missouri. Look at your planning criteria, documents the city has, financing that you intend to use. Customer understanding, this is an important part of this particular project. We were asked to simplify the process of determining the charges for individual developments. Your current system is based on number of fixtures and square footage and things like that, and so it can lead to some interpretation and or confusion among people when they're wanting to connect. This simplifies the process. We're looking at it on a meter size basis. And then what we talk about is a rational nexus. You're looking at numbers that are defensible, but costs you're talking about can be connected to what it actually costs to provide the service to your new customers. We don't want to give you a number that just seems arbitrary. We want it to be something defensible. So what we looked at is what would be considered a generally accepted methodology to look at what your level of service requirements are, how much water do people need, how much sewage do they generate, and to determine an equivalent residential unit. That's another phrase you're going to see throughout here, ERU, equivalent residential unit. That becomes the baseline number we use for everything. And then we're going to look at what the system component costs are. What does it cost to treat? What does it cost to pump water out of the ground? What's it cost to run your storage tanks? Things like that. So in your case, we took a look at water and sewer operations records to see what a single-family residence requires, and that was what we're going to establish as our ERU. Pretty interesting, actually. We did come to the same number, working from two different directions, where water and sewer are each 247 gallons per day per household, and that's based on city operation records, historical data the city provided. Back during the rate study, we projected growth in the city through 2031. At that point in time, it was agreed to look forward to a little over 3,600 new ERUs by 2031. That would bring your total to about 9,400, a little more than that. So right now, if you do the math backwards, you've got about just under 6,000. We take a look at the system component cost. Specifically in this study, we looked at your cost for source of supply, that's your wells. We looked at storage cost. We did not, by request of the city, include distribution system improvements, pipes in the ground. We didn't include general equipment used for the system, trucks, SCADA systems, things like that. We specifically looked at source and storage issues on the water system side. On the sewer system side, we looked at the treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, and we looked at major pump stations and an interceptor that were projected for growth projects. We did not include, again, at the request of the city, we did not include every single possible facility that could be interpreted for growth of the system. One thing I do want to mention is before we even get to these numbers, I want to be really clear with this. I'm going to mention it probably a couple more times. The numbers you see at the end of this are going to be what would be considered maximum numbers that you can defend based on this criteria. If you added more things, you could probably bump the number up higher. The number we show you is not what you have to adopt. It's up to you to decide what you want to adopt, if anything, and you can defend a number at least as high as what we're going to present tonight. So when we look at this, jump right into the numbers here. Source of supply. Currently, you're charging $340 for a new single-family residence. When you break down the cost of wells, existing wells with remaining capacity and future wells, you're looking at a cost of about $355 per residential unit. Storage, you're looking at a cost of about $378. So at this point in time, just looking at your water supply and storage costs for the physical capital facilities, you're looking at a cost of about $732 per equivalent residential unit. So a single-family house, that would be a justifiable connection charge for them. Now, another thing I want to explain what's going on here. Your base equivalent residential unit is going to use 3/4 inch meter. Weight factor of 1, it is what it is. That's our base number. So you're looking at $732. When you look at meter sizes, the larger your meter, the more water you can flow through it. And it's not a linear relationship where a 2 inch is twice as big as a 1 inch. They get bigger on an exponential basis. In this case, what we do is we use American Water Works Association's standard for meter equivalency, meaning the number in the center column is how many times larger in capacity that size meter can be than a single 3/4 inch meter. Again, these weighting factors then are presented just as multiply the base charge of $732 times the weighting factor for that meter size. I want to stress again, that does not mean you have to charge at this schedule, but this is something you could do. Something that you want to be aware of specifically that we talked about with the city is this. Without your current charges being based on meter size, meters tend to be generally oversized somewhat. So someone might say, I don't use 15 times the water of a residential house, but I have a 2 inch meter. They may not need one. So be careful when you look back and say, what's using a 2 inch meter now, and is it really using that? What you want to look at is, we have this capacity being made available at this development, and they could draw through a 2 inch meter reasonably 15 times the amount as the 3/4 inch meter. They may not, but you are providing them the ability to do so. And so what you want them to have is understand when sizing meters for new developments, be cognizant of what are you putting in and how much is it? Because you'll get people saying, I'm not going to use that and I've always put in a 2 inch meter for this type of development. You want to think about that a little bit more, a little closer. And again, this weighting factor schedule, in addition to the base number saying you have discretion on how you want to do that, you can adjust your weighting factors as necessary also. I would not bring them higher than that necessarily, but if you wanted to bring them back for any local reasons, that's okay. Again, we used a national standard that is a justifiable standard. Okay, same process on the wastewater side. The numbers are bigger. Currently, you are charging $400 to new sewer connections for a single-family residence. Treatment costs are approximately $1,500 per residential unit to provide the service that they need. On the collection side, you're looking at just under $1,000 per customer. So when you add those together, you're looking at about a net allowable service connection charge of just a little over $2,500. Probably want to round that to a round number when you do this, but that's the number again. You can justify charging based upon remaining capacity in the plant that you've paid for and what that costs, at future expansions that are projected at the plant, and also looking at regional pump stations and an interceptor project that the city has projected moving forward. There were some projects both on the water and the wastewater side that were projected out in the 2028, 2030 range. We did pull those back out of the project. They were based on your master plans that are getting to be about 10 years old. We would recommend taking a look at those, updating those numbers, and as you see fit, bring those projects back in, but with the timing and everything else, we didn't want to get into a position where we were overstating everything. Our initial cut at looking at with those numbers were, quite frankly, very unreasonable, and we didn't feel that you, at this point with your planning data, to justify it beyond that. So we're looking at projects that are going to take you out to the early 2020s at this stage of the game. Okay, similar, you're going to look at your water meter size. your sewer customers or water customers, exact same methodology I told you about before, same weighting factors, you see how the numbers play out. All the things I said about that, it's exactly the same calculation process here. Again, this analysis, take a look at your findings, this analysis calculates your maximum allowable fee. That does not mean you have to put it in at exactly this number. That's your discretion. We've provided the data and the analysis based upon the city's plans that you have in place at this point. Things that I would recommend you take a look at when you plan to implement it. First off, we recommend, and it's in our report, a 90-day period from notification to actual implementation. It's not a requirement in Missouri. Other states have requirements like that. And what that does is that keeps someone who is ready to start building something today from being surprised if your rates are going to change significantly. They know what they can plan for. So if someone is planning to build a house in the next 90 days, has a reasonable expectation of what their charges are going to be, and the people beyond that are going to know this is what's coming. Something I do want to point out is even with these numbers, we did see some existing customers, we just compared what they paid and didn't pay. Most of them go up. Some of them, depending on how they counted fixtures in certain commercial establishments, could possibly come down. So you're going to see an adjustment in the method. The methodology changes some assumptions, and so it's going to look at things a little bit differently. What we would suggest looking at is whenever you set that base rate, look at an inflation factor for 3 to 5 years, just to be an automatic adjustment to go with that. But when you look at updating, when you get to that 3 to 5 year range, take a look at your master plans again. If you have updated your master plans, updated your other documents, you update your capital improvements plan, take a look at the whole thing again. This is not a number that's static for years to come. This is what it should cost this year. Next year it may cost more. I doubt it will cost less, but it will either cost the same or it will cost more. So take a look at it from that way. At a minimum, you could look at it at an inflation factor for 3 to 5 years, and then at that point, take another hard look at it and make sure all of your base assumptions make sense. And so moving forward, recognize that this isn't something you want to be saying 10 years from now the number's going to be the same. But I guess also that's up to you to decide how you want to do that. Any amount less than the number shown here at some point in time is going to be reflected in your user charges, because you're still talking about costs that the city is going to incur for these utilities. So just caution you that way also. It's not, the money's a trade-off somewhere at some point in time. So those are our findings from the numbers. I've given everyone a copy of what's there and our initial recommendations here about how you would go about implementing it. At this point, just ask if anyone has any questions or other comments. Yes, sir.
The sewer rates that are considered, those are based simply off the size of the water meter and not off the calculated daily usage? Am I correct in that?
What we did was we established an equivalent residential unit based on the usage of one residential unit. So the flow does factor into it. Your meter size for your customer when it goes in should be based upon the amount of water that they intend to use or have available to them.
Then how did you determine how much sewer is used in a residential unit?
We looked at city's historical records for wastewater flows.
For their total wastewater flow?
Yeah,
Isn't that going to include the commercial and industrial flow?
We looked at all flows.
I mean, how are you going to differentiate the residential out of that, since it's not metered? I guess that's my big question. How do you know that we didn't...
We calculated
we didn't take some of that sewer flow that came from a commercial enterprise and put it over in the residential.
The total number, the total sewer flow number includes everyone. And what we do is we back out your system into equivalent residential units. So a commercial customer
is still is an equivalent.
Is going to have a certain number. You're going to have if they use 10 times the amount of water, they're just going to be 10 ERUs. Okay. So you're bringing it back to that residential unit base, and then you multiply it out based upon the actual demand.
Okay. Now I understand.
The process of, if I can jump in for a second, just to make sure that everyone knows that what's presented tonight is their findings based on our data. And then it's up to the city now and then ultimately the city council to determine what actual rate structure will we put into place. What are going to be those rates for water connection and sewer connection fees that will be brought back at the next council meeting in January. Part of this plan and the overall plan is to go to the voters in February, as the council elected last meeting, with a referendum asking for changes in the way that we apply the impact fees to the future development. So prior to that hitting the ballot boxes in February, we will have something in front of council with recommendations on what the impact fees should be. And so much of this depends on the direction of the city, whether or not we want to focus more intensely on residential development or we want to focus more on commercial development, could impact how we either put a weighting scale together or how we put a base rate together. But these at least give that maximum range or maximum amount that can be supported by our data. And there's one other thing that needs to be also thought about when we do this is the rates themselves will actually cover some of these expenses. So even though these are things for future development, some of that could be covered from within the rates itself. And then, of course, on the commercial side and even on the residential side, the more people you move in and the more businesses you bring in, the more revenue comes in from sales tax generated from both sides. So those need to be factored into what's a fair and equitable rate to keep the city growing.
Well, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can get a hold of David and he will let me know.
And council, if you have any questions, get a hold of Jim or David. Those questions, a lot of homework to do. Next up is mayor's announcements. The Republic Municipal Election will be held on April 3rd, 2012 to elect a mayor and 4 city council members. Candidate filing will begin on December 13th at 8 a.m. and will conclude on January 17th at 5 p.m. at City Hall. City offices will be closed on December 26th, January 2nd, and January 16th. Candidates must comply with all prevailing laws concerning eligibility and campaign financing. We have birthdays. Lots of them.
Karen Freeman has a birthday. Happy birthday, Karen. Dwayne, I'll let you come up here, Dwayne.
Show off that ringtone on your phone, would you?
Happy birthday, Charlie. Mark, the Chiefs have birthdays this month. Happy birthday. And Charlie Brashears, happy birthday. Thank you. And also Brenda, who doesn't buy her own cars, has a birthday. And wish everybody a happy birthday.
Code books, updates are ready. Please bring your code book in to Brenda or Alice so it can be updated. Do that again, yes. Next, we'd like to open up to citizen participation. Anybody here that wants to speak on something not on the agenda, step up to the mic, give your name, address, and phone number, all that pertinent information, and give us your best 3 minutes. Anybody? Citizen participation closed. Have a motion on the consent agenda. Need a motion, a second for the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. On to financial report. Laura, you give us an overview, please?
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. And I would like to request that you approve expenditures in the amount of $101,353.40 as presented. I will highlight some of the departments that have used more of the funds this time, including Finance Department. And $16,568 of that amount was for the Summit Support for 2012. So if we can keep our software up and going. And $12.76, the remainder was for flu shots. So very important expenses there. The sewer, $19,824. That amount was to purchase a 2012 Ford F-150 that the council had approved in September. And for the street department, the $22,227 of that amount was to pay TJW Engineering on the Oakwood 60. So, and if there's any other questions, I have all the invoices here, so.
Anybody have any questions? No questions? Need a motion, a second, for approval of financial report?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
On to reports from staff. Jim, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Nothing? Ron?
No.
Nothing? Future community events. Jared, please step up to the podium, please.
Good evening. Future community events for tonight.
It's ringtone night.
This is for you, Jared.
Oh! I'm sitting there thinking it's a cell phone. I'm like, what is going on here?
No, this is all choreographing these
Oh,
for
this
you.
is nice.
Give your own theme
That
song.
totally caught me by surprise there. That's a nice one. I was like, somebody's got to turn that cell phone off here in a minute. This is very nice. I appreciate that. Future community events. December 14th, Racing to Read story time, 10 a.m. at the Republic Library for ages 1 to 6. December 15th, Tweens and Teens holiday movie night at 4:30 p.m. That's for grades 3 through 12 at the Republic Library. December 16th, Edge Mobile class, learn it once again at the Republic Library at 10 a.m. December 17th, Parents Night Out. That's at the Park and Rec Department at 5 p.m. That's for ages 4 to 12. Pre-registration is required. December 19th, registration for our Youth Girls Winter Volleyball Program. It's grades 3 through 8. December 19th, Toddler Open Gym, 10 a.m. No registration is required. We did get some new toys for Toddler Open Gym, and they were popular today, I might add. So I want to come check it out. December 21st, Christmas Story Time, 10 a.m. for ages 1 through 6 at the Republic Library. December 22nd through the 30th, Schools Out program. All-day program from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's for ages K through 12, and pre-registration is required. December 23rd, December 23rd is Toddler Story Time, 10:30 a.m. That's free activity at the Republic Community Center. December 26th, the Monday, city offices will be closed in observance of Christmas. December 28th, Racing to Read Story Time, Republic Library, 10 a.m. for ages 1 through 6. December 29th, Senior Citizen Movie Day, once again at our Parks Department. Free popcorn and coffee, 2 p.m. That's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. December 29th, Christmas with the Polar Express, 2 p.m., Republic Library for grades K through 5. Monday, January 2nd, city offices will be closed in observance of New Year's Day. I do appreciate the music.
Thank you, Jared. Board Commission and Committee reports. Board of Adjustments, January 5th. Capital Improvements Committee, December 20th. City Council, January 9th and January 23rd. Planning and Zoning Commission, December 19th. The old business. Need motion to have the second reading of Bill number 1130.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending Bill number 10-49 and the subsequent related bills, appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri, expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2011 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto.
Need a motion for final passage of Bill number 11-30.
Motion.
Second. All in favor? No?
Roll call.
Discussion, sorry.
I don't know if you want any more discussion or not.
Can you get the overview by the author, please?
I didn't know if you wanted me to point out again that actually it was the Aquatic Center that was the cause of this amendment. And so this falls back in Jared's hands again for the $3.4 million. So the amended budget is $17,987,230. If there's any questions?
Any questions? by council. Questions? Need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Harrelson? Aye. Councilmember Poole?
Aye.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Harder?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Groom?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Clinking-Beard?
Aye.
Okay. On to bill number, we need a, motion to have, motion to second to read, to have the reading for bill number 11-31.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? And we have,
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, appropriating from the revenue of the City of Republic, Missouri, expenditures in accordance with the fiscal year 2012 budget of the City of Republic, Missouri, and providing for adjustments thereto.
motion for final passage of bill number 11-31. And with that,
And, it is to request that we approve the 2012 budget in the amount of $15,291,020. And if there have been no changes that have been made since the first time it was presented. I didn't know, Jim, if you wanted to talk about what we had included that,
Yeah,
we
just
wanted
to
to
make
talk about.
sure that everyone is on the same page, and I did put it on in my report, just a couple of items. The health insurance, as council had voted on in the previous meeting, the reductions to that were factored into the budget that's been presented, so those, corrected numbers, were in there, you know, within a closer amount. You can't be 100% exact, but of course, we made those reductions to reflect the changes in the premiums. Same for the, general liability insurance that was also approved by council. That number had also been, budgeted back during the budget meetings at a higher number because we were anticipating a potential increase. The numbers came in lower, so we backed those numbers down. Those are accurate in the budget. And then also, the one thing that, was also included in there from the budget meetings was a 2% salary adjustment that was to be paid to all full-time employees, for 2012. And that was, again, as we had, discussed, and the council actually voted on, in the preliminary, request was what type of increase should we be able to give to the employees this year, and the 2% was the one that was the, most popular. So that's what was factored into the budget. And then the only other thing I will add, part of that ranking that we gave out to council, that was based off of the budget meetings that we had, and in there we had not just the salary portion of it, but we had some capital needs in there as well as personnel and positions, and all of those had, you know, were rated on by council. And as the year goes by and we look to the first and then more likely the second quarter, as we project our revenues a little more accurately, we'll be able to move some of those back into the budget, and be able to accomplish those for next year. But those will all certainly come back to council before anything is decided upon.
Jim. Any questions from council?
I can add one more thing, is
Yes.
that, after final approval tonight, then I will put the budget books together, and they should be ready next week. So,
Any questions or discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilmember Clinking-Beard?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Groom?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Harder?
Aye.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Poole?
Aye.
Councilmember Harrelson?
Aye.
And on to new business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion for the first reading of bill number 11-32.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending Schedule 1, Table 1A, general speed zones of the Republic Traffic Code.
And we have David up again.
This bill is a house cleaning item. This adjusts only one set of speed limits in our traffic code, and that is on South Main Street, P Highway. If anyone has traveled the area in the last month or so, you've noticed a crosswalk has been established at South Main and Gray Street. This extends our 30-mile-an-hour speed limit past that point, so we have slower traffic in the vicinity where we're inviting pedestrians to cross. I will ask if any of the council members can recall discussing two locations where MoDOT is going to drop the speed limit without a whole bunch of arm twisting in one night. It doesn't happen very often when they instigate these kind of things. But this is required to have a good solid enforcement of the new signs that they have installed, and would remind council that they pretty much run the show in setting the speed limit. Our option is whether to enforce them or not.
So you say no, I don't have to slow down. That's still actually state highway there, isn't it?
It is.
Any questions for Mr. Brock or discussion? They must want to go home tonight. This is a first read. If you have any questions, please get with Dave Brock or Jim Christie, please. On to other business. Resolution number 11-R-73A, resolution of the Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the city administrators to submit a direct loan application to the Missouri Transportation Finance Corporation for financing of Route 60 and Oakwood intersection improvements. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Nope, don't forget I said that.
Discussion.
We'll go straight to the discussion. Just checking, you guys are good.
Hey, I'm okay with it. But,
We just follow you right over the cliff.
But submittal of this application to the Missouri Transportation Finance Corporation does give the city an alternative way to pay for the $221,000 that we are obligated to pay for our share of the Oakwood and 60 intersection. And even though we have a cost apportionment agreement with MoDOT, they do give these loans and do allow us to submit. It is due by December 16th, and one downside of it is, of course, that there is an interest rate, and the interest rate when I had the amortization ran, it was 1.25% that we could select to pay over a 5 to 10 year period of time, which I had selected a 5-year period, which would deobligate the $221,000 from 2012, but obligate us for the next 5 years to approximately $45,000 per year, which would still allow other projects to be done through the streets and stormwater fund. So, but along with this application, they do require a $500 application fee to be submitted. So, and you know, of course, it's as with the state, you never know. It's never a sure thing, but as long as you get in their round of applications, and it is for one of their projects, they usually do approve it. So it's just a alternative plan of financing for this substantial amount.
So it'd free up what, $15,000, $17,000?
Instead of us paying the $221,000 upfront, and you know, then we would just be postponing it actually, and
There's a $500 fee to apply.
To apply.
And how much interest is accumulated over that period?
Probably over that time period, at 1.25%, it's like $8,000 over a 5-year period.
So $13,000.
So.
It'll be about $8,500.
$8,500.
$500, yeah, and then
$500 now.
And so, and spread out over a 5-year period of time. And of course, until they don't lock in the interest rates, until the application is actually submitted. So that was the preliminary rate that they had a few weeks ago.
So this will be in the 2012 budget,
It would actually start in 2013, where we would start making our payments.
but it will be in the budget then.
Yes.
Part of the thought process going in, Laura has brought this to the city's attention. We have never used this method before, and she's had success with it. And when you look at the cost of the money at a point in a quarter, that's so reasonable, and being able to keep our funds liquid with the uncertainty over the stormwater sales tax and what that may do for us. And, you know, I think fortunately I wasn't here. Unfortunately, the city went through the ice storm, and at that particular time, you know, whatever cash you had available is certainly king at that point. When you look at the low cost of those funds and being able to keep those liquid to possibly do other projects or utilize in a different way, especially if the stormwater tax were to fail, then at least we'd have a little bit left to continue on with our projects.
Barring this, the 221 initials is actually in the 2012 budget,
It
correct?
is.
So that would free up $200,000+ for next year.
Because that budget for 2012 did take a substantial hit, of course, with the 2012, what we approved. And so,
Yeah, so you pay about 40-something thousand a year for the 5 years, starting in 13, instead of paying 221 next year.
Right.
And on a 1 point or 1.5 is pretty good money.
well, and our thought process is that we could try to find a CD that we could
Can you pay it
come back.
early, or are you required to stick to the schedule if economy changes or whatever and you want it?
You know, I don't think that there is a
No
prepayment
penalty?
penalty on it, so that's, I would have to verify that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that's a no-brainer.
And what Laura was saying too, one of the things, we could actually take that dollar amount, put it into a CD and just, you know, leave it there. I mean, we don't necessarily need it. It could come and be valuable at some point in time, but we could practically make that difference up in the interest just by putting it away in the CD as well. So it seemed to be a pretty good option.
Very good. Any other questions, council? Discussion? All in favor?
Okay, vote now.
I was waiting on Ron to stop you.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Hope it's a trick question.
Resolution number 11-R-74, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving the implementation of a fund balance policy. I need a motion.
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
And the overview.
Okay. I know that there are many policies that we could be and should be looking at. It's just that this fund balance policy under GASB Statement Number 54 is required to be adopted by the end of December 31st to be in compliance. And it was noted in last year's audit that there was a policy in place that never could be located. So this is just to make it official, that what I've done here is follow what GASB requires, is that we, as a city, break out the fund balance into restricted and unrestricted portions. And there are categories that we will need to follow. And I have given that breakout to Jim, or shown him what it would look like. And that there are certain portions of that fund balance that have to be set aside that we cannot spend. And there are, and this is, actually, I should back up. This is pertaining to the governmental funds, and especially to the general fund, on how we use the money. And in the general fund, we have bonds that we need to set aside that are restricted for the bondholders. And so that is a large portion of the restricted share of the fund balance. anything that is unrestricted, which, does include a committed, assigned, or the unassigned fund balance is called unrestricted. And we would like to set that goal that it be at least maintained at 17% of annual operating expenditures, which is what they call our rainy day fund. And that if we have no revenues coming in, at least we have 2 months of operating expenditures that we can pay those bills in the unlikely event that we would have not have any revenue come in. But, this is in accordance with what the GFOA recommends and under governmental accounting standards. So that's why it's been brought to you at this time. Because like I said, there are other policies that we will be bringing to you, but this one just needed to be done, and so we wouldn't be slapped on the hand by our auditor.
Which is always a good thing.
And there are, during the budget process, everybody received, Laura gave everyone a listing of all of the reserves accounts in there, and if, if you have any questions or comments about which ones are restricted or unrestricted or what have you, if you could either refer to that, or if you don't have that any longer, get with either Laura or myself and we can provide you with that. But, of course, with the adoption of the policy, the important thing is, my first question is to make sure that we are now complying with the policy that we're going to adopt, and Laura said, of course we are, so we're good.
And, and we do have something Jim and I will be looking at this next year, is that unofficially we do have restricted accounts that are sitting out there that we need to either formalize and make them officially restricted for certain purposes, so.
When you say restricted account, it's basically, that's money that can be used for only one purpose, and it can't be used, okay.
Yes. But just unofficial, right now.
Any questions, council? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I don't have one. Have a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Harrelson? Councilmember Cool? Councilmember Ward? Councilmember Harder?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashear?
Aye.
Councilmember Grimm?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Clinkenbeard?
Aye. Has anybody ever said no?
Oh, yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
And
Thank you,
there is-
everybody.
And there is cake. Brenda provided cake, and number 29, page 29 cake.
Page 29.